Let's talk more about the legacy of Yao Ming from people who cover the NBA. First, Michael Wilbon. This is what the journalist wrote back in 2010. Almost certainly, Yao Ming has introduced more people to professional basketball, surely the NBA brand, than any one man in the history of the sport. While it's difficult to get exact ratings of the 39 NBA games broadcast in a season in China on CCTV, the best available evidence is that approximately 200 million have frequently watched when the Rockets play. Let's discuss that now with Steve Kyler. He's joining us from Florida. He's editor and publisher of Basketball Insiders and has covered the NBA for the past 17 seasons. We've talked about how Yao changed the NBA for China, but how has the league changed in the wake of Yao, would you say?
Well, I think the one thing that Yao brought was a lot of credibility in terms of Chinese basketball. It wasn't something that was happening. I think we've seen more teams be more interested in scouting China for basketball talent. And I think more importantly, I think he legitimized basketball for a whole lot of people who maybe didn't believe that China was going to be able to produce basketball players.
Yeah, back in the 80s, I remember it was like Bill Laimbeer and Kevin McHale and Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. But now the names, it's basically an international roster everywhere, isn't it? I mean, the game's changed dramatically, hasn't it?
It has, and globalization, and that I think that's going to be Yao's biggest contribution to basketball was that he opened the doors. He was the statesman, the ambassador, if you will, and brought, you know, 1 billion fans to the game. You know, the second largest basketball market is China. We're seeing more and more players leaving the NBA and finding new homes and new careers in China, and it's become the second best place in the world to play basketball, and a lot of that is because of what Yao has done. He not only brought credibility to the NBA, but he also brought the NBA to China.
Yeah, you see the two-way street. Marbury's like a famous star there in China now. The NBA's had some outstanding players at Yao's position center. Of course, there's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Shaquille O'Neal. I almost don't feel like this is a fair question to ask how Yao ranks because he was so hobbled with injuries. He didn't have the long, storied career that some of these other players had. But how does he rank?
Well, when you look at Yao's NBA career, it was 9 seasons, really 8. He played 5 games his last year in the NBA, and he just never amassed the kind of numbers that you think of for a Hall of Fame player. You know, he's not in the top 100 in scoring, not in the top 100 in rebounds, didn't win a championship, was a multi-time All-Star, but you're also talking about somebody whose contributions are probably bigger in what he did away from the NBA than what he did in the NBA. But in his time, he was one of the most dominant players, one of the more skilled players, certainly at his position. And I think he changed a lot of the way the big man plays. He was kind of a very different type of player that way, incredibly skilled.
Yeah, he certainly was. And what a big guy. I had a chance to meet him last year. Oh, man, he's really, really tall. The NBA has been trying to expand internationally. We talked a little bit about that. A Chinese smartphone maker sponsors several teams. A Chinese company, Tencent, has a deal to stream NBA games in China. How important would you say is the international fan base to the NBA as it continues to create this global footprint, so to speak?
It's huge. I mean, we're seeing more and more emphasis on exhibition games played in China, talk of regular season games. You know, the travel is kind of the big logistics problem, but the NBA would love to eventually host regular season games in China. We're seeing more and more NBA players spending their off season in China tied to their marketing deals. It's not uncommon for 50, 60 NBA players to be in China. China is a huge part of the global brand for the NBA, and there's a league office in China, and it's a big part of the NBA's global footprint.
Yeah, how did he change over his time in the NBA? Because I kind of think of him when he first got there as perhaps shy, more reticent, difficulty with the language, but now you talk to the guy and he's really comfortable in his own skin.
He is. He was a big part of All-Star Weekend in Toronto. And, you know, when you see him next to the other Hall of Famers, not out of place in any way, that shyness you talked about was gone. Very comfortable talking about his career and his place and really what's next for him. He really does believe strongly in trying to help, you know, younger kids find the game, find coaching, development. He's been very involved in that, owns a team in China, and has really been a big part of growing the game. And I think that when you talk about how he's evolved, he was very much a guy that was kind of over in the corner, and now he's Yao and everyone knows him.
Yeah, Steve Kyler, thanks so much for joining us from Florida. Really appreciate it.